When Invincible tells Eve what happened with Anissa, what would her reaction be? We open in what should be a peaceful setting. Mark and Eve are in bed. Baby Tara is asleep beside them, and Eve wants to reconnect. She leans over Mark, saying it's been a while. But if you look at Mark's face, he is completely checked out. He stares blankly at the ceiling, lost in thought. When Eve gets playful and moves closer, Mark suddenly reacts. His instincts take over and he pushes her away. His eyes are wide as he yells, "Eve, no, I can't." The sudden outburst wakes baby Tara, leaving Eve shocked, hurt, and confused. The burden Mark has been carrying isn't just affecting him, it is affecting their home life. We jump to another night to see how bad things have gotten. Mark has resorted to sleeping alone on the couch. Eve comes in looking sympathetic and gently kisses a sleeping Mark on the lips. But instead of waking normally, he reacts in fear. He explodes awake and launches himself backward with so much force that he smashes through the wall and breaks the glass just to get away from her touch. Eve is done. She is upset, demanding to know what is wrong with him and asking if they are ever going to talk about the wall between them. But Mark is struggling to breathe, staring at her like a trapped animal, completely overwhelmed. Now we have a tone shift. We see Mark in the bathroom. He is trying to secretly flush the terrible alien food Oliver's bug wife Aluma made for them. He pushes a strange button on the space toilet, noting that it sounds like a blender. Eve looks at him, looks at the ruined bathroom, and drops a classic line. "I don't think I'll ever look at you the same way again. If you ever look at me again, this is so embarrassing." It is a brief, funny, normal moment. But look at Mark's face in the last panel. Even after a light-hearted situation, he can't smile. He lowers his head and retreats. He tells her he is going to take a shower for the rest of the day. The weight on his mind is still there, and he just wants to wash it away. The lighting shifts to a warm sunset hitting the window. Mark and Eve share a passionate kiss. You can see Mark pulling her close, his hands around her waist. For these panels, it looks like he is trying to push through his emotional scars and force himself to feel normal again. But the illusion shatters. He just can't do it. Right in the middle of the kiss, painful memories catch up to him. Mark's face twists in pain. He breaks the kiss and pushes her back against the glass. Tears instantly stream down his face, his teeth gritted in emotional pain. Eve is terrified, asking Mark, "What is this? What's going on with you?" But Mark slides down the wall, curling into himself. Defeated, he just keeps repeating, "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." Eve's frustration vanishes. She kneels in the shadows, reaches toward him and begs, "Mark, talk to me, please." Sitting on the floor, broken and vulnerable, Mark finally says the words he has been terrified to say. "Anissa did something that left me deeply shaken. She crossed a line with me." Eve is stunned. The word what hangs in the air as the reality hits her. Mark sits there weeping, explaining what happened. He tells her he had just gotten back, that they were broken up at the time, and Anissa found him. He tells her that he had turned her down before, but this time she wouldn't stop. All of Eve's anger from the bedroom and couch disappears, replaced by heartbreak. She drops to the floor beside him, wrapping her arm around his shoulders. She tells him, "I'm so sorry. We can get through this together." But Mark is spiraling and dives into the darkest part of his thoughts. He starts blaming himself. He tells Eve that he told Anissa to stop, but he keeps wondering if he could have done more. He tells her he keeps thinking about what he should have done differently, but he didn't. He is overwhelmed with guilt. In a tragic 9-panel grid, we see him clutching his knees, asking himself the most painful question. Did he somehow allow this to happen? He wonders why he didn't do more and keeps questioning himself. It is a dark and realistic portrayal of someone trying to make sense of a terrible experience. Just as Mark is sitting alone in the dark hallway, his head buried in his arms, consumed by self-blame, the tension spikes. Out of nowhere, Eve screams his name from the other room. Mark flies through the bedroom doorway, his eyes wide with adrenaline. Eve is leaning over the crib in panic, tears streaming down her face. It's Tara. Something's wrong. It is an unbelievable moment. The universe won't give them a second to process everything before throwing them into another frightening situation with their child. We get a massive time jump to let the dust settle. The frightening medical situation with Tara has passed, and we see Mark and Eve back in a normal routine. They are eating dinner together. Eve is putting the baby to sleep, and Mark is quietly doing the dishes. It feels calm and safe, but the conversation isn't over. They sit down on the couch. Mark is reading a data pad, and Eve opens that emotional door again. She asks the million-dollar question, "Why do you blame yourself for what Anissa did?" Mark looks down, the pain returning to his eyes. He repeats his deepest fear. I didn't do enough. I should have tried harder. And Eve instantly cuts through his guilt. She looks him in the eyes and gives him the reassurance he has been needing. She tells him the idea that he wanted any of this is complete nonsense. She takes a moment to apologize for walking away when he first told her, explaining she was overwhelmed and still processing the shock right before Tara's emergency. But she pulls him close, resting her forehead against his chest, and makes one thing clear. She tells him, not one thing was your fault. You can't blame yourself. We finally see the healing begin. After Eve tells him it wasn't his fault, she wraps her arms around his neck and pulls him into a comforting hug. She tells him, we'll work through this. I love you. And Mark, finally letting go of that guilt, closes his eyes and says, I love you too. And then they kiss. But look at the difference between this kiss and the one by the window earlier. This isn't forced. Mark isn't overcompensating or panicking. It is soft, safe, and genuine. They pull back and Eve takes his hand, interlocking their fingers. She looks at him with love and says, you're here. We're together. That's what matters. Everything else will work itself out. Mark starts to speak, saying, but Eve gently cuts him off. It's okay. And for the first time in what feels like forever, Mark Grayson genuinely smiles. He looks at her and whispers, thank you. It is a beautiful moment, which is immediately interrupted by a loud knock at the door, bringing them back to reality. But the most important step in Mark's recovery happens. We cut to later that night. Mark is taking off his superhero suit, casually venting to Eve about Alan the alien and the hunt for Thrag. He is talking about normal superhero work. Eve is sitting on the bed in her robe. She asks if he's ready for bed and then drops a gentle testing line. I'm ready for something. Mark freezes. You can see the fear in his eyes. The trauma is still there. It doesn't disappear overnight. And Eve is incredible here. She doesn't push him. The second she sees him hesitate, she backs off to protect his boundaries, saying, it's okay if you don't want to. I'm sorry, But Mark cuts her off. He looks at her, his face serious, and makes the choice to take his life back. He tells her, no, I want to try. It is a massive step forward for his character, and this page gives us the most wholesome ending we could ask for. We see Mark and Eve asleep in bed together. Suddenly, from the other room, baby Tara starts screaming. Eve is exhausted and completely asleep, but Mark wakes up. He quietly slips out of bed, letting Eve rest, and walks into the dark nursery. He pulls back the curtain to the crib, and the second Tara sees him, she stops crying. And Mark gives this huge, goofy dad smile. He looks down at his daughter and says, oh man, somebody missed her daddy. Look at you stopping crying at the mere sight of me. I rock. After everything he has been through, the brutal beatings, the psychological torture, and the suffocating guilt, we finally get to see Mark Grayson being a happy father. And that is where we wrap up this incredible issue. But before we officially end the video, I want to take a serious note about the subject we covered today. The storyline between Mark and Anissa deals with heavy and mature themes. The creators of Invincible wrote this to be a realistic psychological nightmare, not a joke, and they portrayed Mark's survivor's guilt with sincerity. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed this deep dive, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and let me know in the comments what you thought of Eve's reaction. I'll catch you in the next one.